Today we're talking on the topic of looks can deceive you. And we're going back to the book of Haggai and just looking at the topic there that is listed. You probably can chuckle as you think about a time or two that you probably have been taken in by looks. And not just from human beings, looking nice, but cars, by foods, a variety of things. And there have been times in which I'm sure on foods you've been at the restaurant and you've looked at the pictures in the menu and you say, oh, that looks really good. And you begin to formulate what it's going to taste like based off of the description that's listed there. You're like, this is going to be, I can't wait to get it. And you order that. And the waitress or waiter goes and brings the food back and you're just chomping at the bit, can't wait to bite into it. And after you pick up your fork and go into it, nothing at all like what it looked like in the picture. Nothing at all like that. It looks sweet and it's sour. It looked like it was going to be, juicy from it, and it's all dried out. Like this doesn't look anything like either. It doesn't look like the picture, and sometimes it looks like the picture, but it doesn't taste like anything, like cardboard. And that is a letdown because the looks deceives you. And then you start thinking of the money that you spent for it. Now, I just spent $13 or $16 or $10 or whatever it is for this, and this is detestable. I wouldn't have bought it if I would have known that it tastes like this. And then there's, of course, those bigger purchases and so forth that take place, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's a car, and so forth. And then there's a human experience interaction with people that they look really nice on the outside, but when you get to know them, you're like, they're pretty ugly. But those things just help to illustrate the facet of the idiom that we use that you can't judge a book by its cover. The only way to be able to really understand and to know is to be able to find out. And so don't be so quick to pass judgment one way or another, because something can look really good on the outside and it can be really bad. And then there could be something that, quote, looks not appealing on the outside. And you've had those same things where you looked at food and it's like this is like a conglomeration of mess. And you taste it and you're like, man, this is the best mess I've had. I don't know what it is. But it's really good, just the way the seasoning is and the herbs and all that kind of stuff, it just comes together. So then you learn, well, maybe I can't go by what I look at, because looks can be deceiving. In our story in the book of Haggai chapter 2, we're looking at something that, again, illustrates this in an extent. And it deals with the service and the purpose of God. And we bear in mind, of course, I think it goes that it does not need to be stated, but I will state it just for the record, that this is the treatment of the building of the temple that God is exerting. And so it is seen in this story that it really illustrates don't go solely off the looks. And we saw that Old Testament principle in the book of 1 Samuel, the classic text that we say that man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. He looks on the inside. And so this was, again, in relation of Samuel going to choose a prophet, rather going to choose a king. And they came in and he said, well, surely this is the man that God has chosen. And God said, no, that's not the one. And then another one comes in and he said, well, certainly this would be the one. And he said, no, he's not the one either. From the outward appearance, it looks like this will be the right candidate or the proper choice. But I'm looking beyond this. I'm looking at the spirit, and this is not the person. So don't go by the outside, but rather go by the inside. But again, as human beings, we can't go by, quote unquote, the inside, because we can't see the inside. We can only see as much as maybe shines through, but as such, we can't see that. And we can sometimes lose out on big blessings because of how things look on the outside. Because we might take a chance and say, well, because it doesn't look that way, we will not go. So we have to go beyond that, but to be able to look and understand. And in the book of Haggai, as you go to chapter 2, to recap, because it's been some time since we have looked in the book of Haggai, the name Haggai, it means like festive or festival. And this is really a celebratory exclaim in terms of his name being chosen, his name. And so in this particular case, it is somewhat indicative of the book that God is seeking to restore Israel. They have come back, just to level set us here, they have come back out of captivity. to their homeland. And coming back into a war-torn country, this is not a pleasant experience by any means. And so you would imagine that if you've left, when we left out of the church and were unable to meet for COVID for that period of time, you come back in, the cobwebs in, dust is settled, and so forth. And that's just, a year. So if you think of it as if you left the place for 60 years, 70 years, and you came back, you would know that it would be in disrepair. Weeds are going to be everywhere. Animals would have moved in. Insects have taken over. The building would be dilapidated and being in a worn position. And so before you can worship, you have to do what? You have to restore, you're going to have to build, you have to clean up, you have to repair, be able to get things suitable again. Because you just can't come in, after that long on a Monday and say we're going to meet on Sabbath. It's going to take time to build. And again, compounding that again, the temple had been violated. And so they're going to have to go back and to restore all these things because of the hardship that had come. And so as they go back in, we saw in chapter 1 that they were deterred from building because things did not go as initially planned. There was obstacles, of course, by Sanballat and his bunch. And he had been able to influence the king to keep them from working. And according to chapter 1, the people essentially reasoned that because we're having these hardships, maybe this isn't the time. And that was twofold. One, in that the 70 years as such, quote unquote, for the ruin had not all been fulfilled. So they're more or less saying, well, as a watch, okay, was countdown, we actually have a few more years. So when those additional years have passed off, then that's the green light to go. Okay, and then the other part of it was that, of course, with the hostilities that were coming from the Samaritans, that maybe this was further indicative of that. And so there are times that we make decisions based off of circumstances. And again, I think that should be a warning to us that may not be the best decision to make. In other words, we sometimes may look and say, well, if this is of God, then this will, fall into place. And sometimes it does fall into place. Like clockwork, you see like the providence of God. It's okay, well, boom, you say, well, I need the passport. And the passport's going to take 6 weeks. And so if I'm to go, I need the passport to come, be expedited. And the passport is expedited. And well, if I'm to go, I need the money for the ticket. And the money, comes in. And if I'm to go, I need to have the right, this flight to be able to connect. And the flight comes in. And all those things line up. And then one may look and say, well, that's providence, opening the way up. But then there also the other side of it, that sometimes the passport may not come in 2 weeks. Right? Sometimes the means may not come in at the right time. Sometimes an obstacle may arise. And so we certainly want to be mindful of it. Again, not looking at circumstances, because looking at circumstances, we might then conclude, well, maybe then it may not be God's will because this didn't come through. Maybe it's not God's will because this didn't line up. Or maybe it's not his will because I expected this to come through on this date and it did not. And so we want to be careful then not to lean, quote, one way too much to the other, but really to look at the principle behind it. Look at how the leading of God is. And it may be he may be leading in that respect. And it may be he may not be leading. He may be saying, well, this is not the time. And so you could say then, well, hey, that can get pretty confusing. Because the difficulty, in short, doesn't mean that God is not opening the door. Sometimes you have to knock a little louder. Sometimes you have to pray a little more fervently. So just because circumstances appear to not be showing the green light, again, is not necessarily an indication that this is not God's favor. This is not what his plan is. You can look at that in different stories. You think of Abraham and the birth of Isaac. Isaac didn't immediately come, even though God had promised that the child will come. It wasn't the next day. It wasn't the next year. It took time for that to happen. But again, in that situation, how did he know that it would happen? Well, because God had said this will be. So in those cases, it's clear. We have that clear promise that's there. But in some of our interactions, we don't have the, quote, the clear mandate. You say, well, I want to go on a missionary trip. And we claim the promise. Jesus said, go ye into all the world, right? And so we can use that. But again, it's not specifically God indicating, I want you to go here. And so we certainly use a variety of things, but again, without belaboring the point, it's a matter of not just saying, well, obstacles mean no, a green, clear pathway mean yes. That is not always the case. And as related to the story here, they had obstacles that were in front of them. They did not have a clear pathway, but they should have gone through and built in spite of the circumstances. They allowed the circumstances to encourage them in their complacency, because they said, well, this must not be the time because we don't have the, quote, the green light to move forward. And then when we look in chapter 2 now, we are told now that they are being reproved for what they have done. Famine has come into the land as a means of God being able to draw their attention. They have built up their own place and they have left his place uninhabited. And so in chapter 2, he again sends word, a message by Haggai. So we read in the first verse, it says, in the seventh year, in the seventh month, in the 21st day of the month, that the word of the Lord came by the prophet Haggai, saying, to speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, and to the residue. Another word for residue we might say is what? Is remnant. To the remnant of the people. So he says to speak to Zerubbabel. And again, just to put these people in place, because they will be important for us in the context of chapter 2. Zerubbabel and Joshua and Haggai. Zerubbabel again was the governor. He had been established and set up. He's the governor of those who went back. Joshua is, according to verse 2, who is he? He's the high priest. So we have Zerubbabel, the governor. We have also the high priest, and we have Haggai. Haggai is, and also Zechariah. You don't see Zechariah here, but Haggai and Zechariah. So you have the prophet, you have the governor, and you have the priest. And so God says to Haggai, go in to tell them, ask them this, and say to the people, the remnant of the people, who is left among you, from our scripture text, who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory? And how do you see it now? It's like a classic before and after picture. Where you've seen in magazines, you've seen on shows, renovation shows and so forth. They show you, this is what the space looked like, all right, before. And we've gone in and we've done the renovation. We've ripped out the carpet. We've put in, wood. We've taken out the back, the walls that were there, and we've opened it up. We've put in the granite and so forth. All these things are done. And now here is the reveal, the moment of the reveal. And so the anticipation is there. You're amped up. You want to see, what does it look like? We know what it looked like before, but what is it going to look like when you're done? And in those stories, in those instances, the after always far exceeds the before. Is that not the case? If you looked at one of those programs and the after was worse, there'd be a problem. The whole purpose of being able to see the renovation is that you anticipate that when they're done, that the benefit is going to look much better, or the outcome will look much better than what they started with, right? You're not looking for it to be the opposite. You don't want it to be the same. It's going to far exceed, and in most instances, when you look at it, that's the case, is it not? You look and say, wow, how did they do that? I don't see where they got the vision from to be able to complete that. And this can't be the same place. They've just transformed this. And so in that mindset, this is in Haggai, today we're looking at. Haggai asks the question of them. And this is the question that God wants to be asked of them. And he says that who among you is left that saw this house in her first glory? The house in her first glory, of course, was referring back to Solomon's temple. And the Bible tells us in the book of Kings that when Solomon built the temple, he took what Moses had done in the wilderness and he just supercharged it. If in Moses' time they said, well, the laver is going to be 10 feet by 10 feet. He took that and said, okay, that's going to be 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet. In Moses' time, they said, well, the candelabra is going to be 100 inches high. He'd made it 500 inches high. So the point is, as he built it even grander, he took that which was in miniature and he made it really grand. He overlaid these different things with gold. And it was impressive so that when one saw it, they were impressed, they were awed with it. And again, the catch was not to be so impressed by what you see, but to be impressed by what it represents, who it speaks to, right? Not just that it is overlaid with gold, not that it's marble there, not the symmetry and all those different things, but what it symbolizes, what it represents, that all those things, they pointed to God. So here was this first temple. So he's asking them now, some nearly 70 years after the fact, and there would be some that were there that had certainly seen the first temple in their childhood. And now they're coming back looking at this that is taking place now. So, and through time. So if you were maybe 7 or 8 years of age and you saw Solomon's temple and you come back now, and now you're being asked, this is the before and here is the after. And you would look at this after and say, what? This didn't cut it. This is not anything at all like what we saw before. This is not progress. This is us going the opposite way. We're regressing. You've had a family member who came over to visit you, and you're driving, a nice Lexus, and an Acura, Tesla, nice Honda, whatever the car happens to be, and you're nice suit, nice blouse, and so forth, and you take them out to eat, and you're doing well, nice place you're staying, and they leave and they come back, 3 years later, and you're like in a really small studio. You can't take them out to eat. You pick them up at the airport. It's not a luxury car. It's cars like 15 years old. They're gonna wonder, what happened? What? Last time I was here, you had it going on. What happened? And they may not ask that, but certainly it's going to be a question mark, because you'd have that question mark if you went to them and they were living like that. And this is a stark contrast. What happened? So this is the mindset that is there. It says in verse 3, it says, who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory, and how do you see it now? Is it not in your eyes in comparison of it as nothing? What you're seeing now before you in comparison, the before versus the after, you see it now and it looks like this is nothing. And you could become despondent and be filled with despair. It's like, okay, this is the crown jewel of the nation. This is where God is worshiped. This is where we as a people collectively come to assemble. We come back to Jerusalem. We come singing of the hosannas. We come to worship God. We come to glorify Him. He has brought us out of captivity. Again, first out of Egypt, now out of Babylon. And this is the place that is hallowed by His name. And look at it now. It's not anywhere as nice as what Solomon had done. In fact, you really probably can't even compare it to what would have been in the wilderness, because again, we have gone back. We've gone from high up on the hog, so to speak, and we're now down in the belly. How is this to be? And so it says, is it not in your eyes in comparison of it as nothing? We read it over before in Zechariah chapter 4. Again, these are contemporaries. In Zechariah chapter 4 in verse 10, just a book after. Okay, so just turn a page or so after, and you'll find in Zechariah chapter 4 in verse 10. Zechariah chapter 4 and verse 10, and we're going to be coming to Zechariah, the book, in the weeks ahead. But look at what he says in verse 10, the first part. He says, who hath despised the day of what? A small thing. Zechariah chapter 4 and verse 10. Who hath despised the day of small things? Small beginnings do not dictate how it will end. Remember, the race is not given to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Who hath despised the day of small beginnings, of small start? You have to have a start in order to even be able to finish. If you never start, you will never end. So don't get caught in that trap of never starting, nor get caught in the trap of never ending. But who hath despised a day of small beginnings? Why? Because I am the Lord. I'm going to prosper you. I'm going to bless you to bring this building to pass for my name's sake. And so now back in the book of Haggai, chapter 2. In Haggai chapter 2, where we were in verse 4. In Haggai chapter 2 and verse 4. And again, remember, still the backdrop was in Ezra as well, that when the foundation had been laid, it was that the folks that didn't know, quote, any better, when they saw the foundation, they shouted for joy. They were happy. But the older generation, when they saw the foundation, they did what? They began to cry. Okay, so it's like, you go out to, again, a building site, and you etch it out. This is the layout, and you see it marked out, and because you didn't have anything, you're excited about it. And sometimes you come across people like that. It's like you get something and you didn't have it, and you're ecstatic about it. You've been walking all this time, and you got the car and it's breaking down. I mean, not literally, but it's like, it's barely getting by. But I've been walking all this time. I'm glad to have something. And they, they have like, the really nice car, and they look at yours like, this is nothing. But you're looking, saying, hey, this is something. This is my start. I've been walking. Now I'm able to at least drive. I mean, maybe my car didn't drive me where I needed to go. Not, an autonomous or self-driving car. Maybe it doesn't talk and so forth, and and tell me all these different things. And maybe I don't even have a multi-CD player. It's or whatever the case may be. It doesn't have all these different fancy gadgets and so forth. But you know what? It beats walking. So when they saw this temple foundation being laid, the people who didn't have anything before, they saw it and they were rejoicing, like, okay, hey, we're going to build for God. And the people who had seen, quote, Solomon's temple, they're comparing it to what was in the past. And there's a danger also sometimes in living in the past. Because the only way you can live in the past is you want to stay in the past. But you have to be in the present, though. It doesn't mean that we can't look back and to see what we had and desire to do better. But when we allow that to overshadow us, and there are some people in life that they allow the past to so dominate the present that they cannot escape its shadow. They can't look to the future because of dwelling on the past. And so God is again, he's speaking to them. He's bringing these things in this variety of people that are here. Some who were like pre-captivity, some who were post-captivity or during the captivity, and some who were post-captivity. And he's speaking through them to Haggai, saying, look, now I want you to look at what is done right now. It right now looks like nothing in comparison. But I got news for you, though. Look, what does he say in verse 4? In verse 4 it says, yet now be what? Yet now be strong. Yet now be strong. So again, in comparison between what you remember was there and what you see right now, and I'll answer the question for you. I already know what you're thinking. You're thinking this looks like nothing. It's like you're pulling up at the airport and they get in the jalopy, and before it was the Benz, they're like, they didn't say anything about a respect, and you're like, I already know what you're thinking, but don't worry about it. It's all good. There's a plan that's here. And this is what God is saying to them by his servant, his prophet. He says, yet now be strong. Now again, certainly we would understand him saying be strong, a few things. Number one, he's not talking about being physically strong. For in the Bible, when we read, we understand clearly we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and against principalities. So be strong in the Hebrew suggests be resilient. Don't give up. Press forward. Reminds us of what God told Joshua in Joshua chapter 1. Remember he said be what? Be strong. And we see all throughout the scriptures the same thing, be strong. It means, be bold. Don't allow, quote unquote, what you see to rob you of what I can do. Walk by faith and not by sight. Not by what you can see and what you can touch, but what you're able to touch in the spirit world. What you're able to touch and to reach in the supernatural. What I am able to do, if you would empty yourselves, be strong, and Joshua says, and of a good courage. It also says, then be strong, Zerubbabel. Notice who he addresses. Be strong, Zerubbabel, who is the governor. You have to have faith and boldness to be able to lead and to guide, because sometimes the people will not have the courage to follow. And so, yes, you are, quote unquote, a leader, and the leader does not become indomitable. Everyone becomes weak at some point or another. Everyone becomes overwhelmed at some point or another. Everyone becomes discouraged at some point or another. But he is sending him this word, Zerubbabel, I want you to be strong, be bold, be resilient. And be strong, O Joshua, son of Josedek, the high priest. Don't look at circumstances. If you look at circumstances, it can sometimes overwhelm you. But if you break it apart, Joshua, do not be overwhelmed. Be strong. Because I need to use you as the priest to bring religious instruction into my people. I need you, Zerubbabel, to be able to guide my people, to be able to have interaction amongst Darius and Cyrus, that my temple, that my house may be built. I need you to have boldness and courage to be able to thus do these things. And be strong, all ye people of the land. Earlier we gave them a term, which we said that they were the residue. But then you said, well, what's another term for residue? You said the remnant of the people. So now he's talking to everybody. Okay, so it would be as such, if you pictured it as such, then God is giving a, quote, specific message to Zerubbabel, right? Saying, hey, I need you to be strong. And then he's turning and he's saying to Joshua, I need you to be strong. And he's turning to the people saying, I need you to be strong. So has he left anybody out? No. He hasn't left anybody out. And this is the method in which God is speaking. He's not leaving anybody out. Why? Because everybody is important to accomplish what God's plans are. So it's no big I's and little U's as such. It's not, okay, I can do it all by myself. No. Zerubbabel couldn't do it by himself. Joshua couldn't do it by himself. And the people couldn't do it by themselves. Everyone had to play a part. And some parts may be, quote, big. Some parts may be small, but each one had a part to play, as in the New Testament where Paul says, look, if the whole body were the eyes, then where's the smelling going to take place? Where's the hearing going to be? If the whole body were the hearing, then where is the seeing going to be? But each one is intricately and vitally important. And so the message to each one, again, notice it was the same. Now, they could have varied, but in this particular case, it was the same thing to each person. I need you to be bold. I need you to be resilient. I need you to have confidence and to have courage. And so individually, but yet then collectively. And so I picture this maybe being similar in an analogy, like you may have a quote unquote a football team or something. And you got this whole team, but they all have different functions though. And so you might say to the linebackers, look, I need you to make sure that the quarterback doesn't get hit or sacked. And you might say then to the wide receivers, I need you to go and to do this task on this play. And you're going to say then to the running backs and so, hey, this is what your assignment is. And so the coach is given direction to each, quote, component of the team, but this message, though, is the same for the whole team, though. And so thus God is giving a message then to Zerubbabel. He's given a message to Joshua. He's given a message to the people. And that message is summarily the same. Be strong. Be strong. Don't look at the circumstances that are there of those things that are trying to stop us and to erode us. I need you to be strong, be bold, be resilient. And then it says, and work. That's in verse 4. Be strong, saith the Lord, and work. The work is not going to get done by just twiddling your thumbs. Work is not going to get done by just counting down time. Work is not going to get done by hoping that an angel comes along. But you do the part that you will, and I promise you the work will be done. It's not going to be done by waiting for someone else to do it. But if you do your part, then the work will be done. You remember the story of the person who was trying to cook the meal, and they asked, who would help me to cook the meal? Who will help me to cook the eggs? Who will help me to cook, the bacon? Who will help me to cook the potatoes, and so forth and so on? And went. And she went and she began to ask this person to help. And basically they said, no, I'm unable to do it. Went to the next person, hey, can you help do this? No, I'm unable to do it. And then went to the next person, and so on. And so she took it upon herself to prepare the whole meal. And when the meal was done, everybody said, it smells nice. And when she asked, well, who will help me to eat the meal? Everybody now had time. Person who couldn't help, with the potatoes, they had time to help. They were more than willing to help. Person who couldn't help with the egg, now they had time. But she said, well, because you couldn't help me to cook the meal, then you can't help me to eat the meal. The story says, be strong and work. Why do this work? The very next sentence says, for I am what? I am with you. I am with you. That word for work, it means produce. You can sit around all day and talk about what you don't have. But let's do something with what you do have, though. Not just for quote unquote Haggai's day, but for our day. There are a lot of people today who sit back and they don't do anything because they lament what they do not have. I would do this if I had this. And yes, I get it, I understand, and I have been there. Believe me, I have been there. There are sometimes you don't have the resources to be able to quote to do it. But the resources that you do have, what are you going to do with those? Use what you have, and God will give you more. If you don't use what you have, then why would God give you more? You wouldn't even give yourself more. You wouldn't give me more. It's like, okay, you're saying you don't have this, and you lament it, and you want wishfully to be able to receive more. But he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful in that which is much. He that is unfaithful in that which is least is unfaithful in that which is more. So God would be wasting to turn around and give more. And so he says to them, work, for I am with you. Now, I'm not quote unquote there side by side with you. No, I'm not making a physical appearance and then picking up a shovel and a spade and a brick right beside you. But I am with you in that I sent my prophets to give you encouragement. I am with you in that I'm all around. Look, you can see the other individuals that are responding. I am with you in that you can see that I have inspired with my spirit. I will open the doors of providence. And if necessary, if you do all that you can do, I will send assistance to your aid. And Jesus has told us in the New Testament, lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. So be strong and work, because I am right by your side. Not only am I by your side, but he says, I will also be in you. According to the word that I covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt, so my spirit remaineth among you. Fear not. God remembers and is reminded of his covenant that he has made. And when it says that he remembers, it is not the same thing that we speak of. Because when we remember something, it generally implies that we forgot it. You went to the grocery store for 5 items and you can't remember what the other one was. You have 4 of them. Can't remember for your life what the other one was. And you've gone to a room to get something and you don't remember what you walked into the room for. And in the grocery store and you forgot it and you can't remember it and you're trying to think about it and you get back into the car and then all of a sudden it dawns on you, like, oh, that's what I needed. And you have to go back in and to get it. Well, this is not God forgetting it like that. Like, oh, that's what I need to do. Rather, again, it is human language saying that now it's time for me to be able to do this. It's time for me to be able to act upon it. And so he's speaking again, saying, I have my covenant that's established. I'm not going to forget it. It's not out of my mind. It's not out of my care. You are not important to me. I have engraven you upon the palm of my hands. My spirit remains among you, and because I am with you, and because my spirit is among you, you have no reason to be afraid. I know some people would say, well, you should never be afraid of anything. And there are different phobias and so forth that, the people have. People are afraid of spiders. People are afraid of heights, snakes, doctors, needles. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. Now, the Bible says that, quote, perfect love casteth out all fear. So some people say, well, therefore I shouldn't be afraid of something. I shouldn't be afraid of those things. Well, when the scriptures speak then of perfect love casting out all fear, is it saying then I'm going to make you indomitable, that you'll never be afraid of anything? No. But when God bids us to go forward in his name, to do his bidding, you should not fear, because he has said, I bid you go. So the spider that comes in the room and that you're afraid of the spider, you're afraid of a mouse or what have you, that's nothing to deal with, quote, salvation. But when he bids you to go in his name, so he has given the commandment, do not be afraid. He said to Jeremiah, do not be afraid of their faces. Do not be afraid of what they can do to you. Fear not them that can kill the body, but cannot touch the soul. Rather, fear him that can destroy both body and soul in hellfire. Don't be afraid then, he's telling to the people. All this again in the context of what? Of what they saw. They looked at this temple that is being now built, and he's now telling them these words in reference to what they have seen, what they are looking at, what is before them. For it says that yet, for thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations. Meaning again that he once spoke from Mount Sinai, and he shook the heavens and he shook the earth. He says, oh, okay, I've done this, and I will shake the heavens and the earth. I will shake all nations. The nations shall tremble, they shall be laid down, they shall bow down. And verse 7 it says, and I will fill this house with what, everyone? Glory. With glory. I'm going to fill this house with glory. Verse 7 says, and the desire of all nations shall what? Shall come. The desire of all nations is going to come, and I will fill this house with glory. So this house that is now being built, that they are erecting, they're looking at this and say, this pales in comparison. There's no cause to celebrate. This doesn't look as good as what was formerly there. But now God is saying, looks can be deceiving. This house is not as magnificent on the outside as what Solomon's temple was. This house on the outside does not have the marble overlaying, and it's not as large and opulent as what Solomon had. In fact, this house, when it is dedicated, does not bear the same divine credentials that Solomon's temple bore. But let me ask you a few questions in reference to it. Are you seeing it as such? Doesn't it look like that is nothing. But I don't want you to be overwhelmed. I still want you to be strong. I want you to do the work because I am with you. I'm going to shake the heavens. The very nations shall tremble, and I will send the desire of nations, or the treasure of nations, to come into this house that you look at with disdain. To come to this house that you say is much smaller and inferior than the other one. I'm going to send the desire of nations to come to this house, and he will fill this house with glory. The book of Malachi chapter 3 and verse 1. Malachi chapter 3 and verse 1. We have the classic book, of course, The Desire of Nations, which is talking about Jesus. So what Malachi, or rather what Haggai is prophesying about, is that the one way, the only way that this temple that is inferior in every respect to what Solomon had done, is that Jesus is going to grace this place with his presence. And he's going to give it glory. Because the Prince of Peace is going to walk through there. Now, in the temple that Solomon built, remember the Shekinah glory was there. Okay? It was eye-opening. All those things were great, but this one's going to be hallowed because Jesus in the flesh is going to walk through its doors. That the Messiah is going to come and to abide there. That he's going to walk through here. He's going to bring peace there. The Prince of Peace shall come and shall be seen in this house that looks inferior on the outside. So again, and I can't compare the two. But it's like, again, that dilapidated jalopy that you're driving. In comparison to, quote unquote, the really nice luxury car that you were driving. You're now, okay, you know what? I'm cool. I'm content driving in the jalopy because Jesus is in here. He has made it a hallowed place by his presence. I'm totally fine with that. And so when looking at this temple, it would now inspire them that, hey, don't get caught up in the grandeur on the outside, but I want you to know that somebody is going to come. Yahshua, the Son of God, is going to come physically into this place. So in Malachi chapter 3, and as we close, Malachi chapter 3 and verse 1, it says, "And behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come to" what? His temple, even the messenger of the covenant in whom ye delight in. So the Lord was going to come into this temple. The desire of nations was going to come into this temple and visit. Now, in the interest of time, I will refer you to the book of John chapter 2. And in John chapter 2, there you'll be able to read that Jesus came into this earthly temple as was prophesied. Now, regrettably, when he came to the temple, the people were not prepared to receive him. The desire of nations came, but they were not ready to receive the blessing that they should have been in store to have been able to receive. But the blessing came. The Prince of Peace came. And they lost it because they were looking in all the wrong places. And so God today, he still bids us then to come. He said that he would fill this house with glory. And because he said he would, then he certainly filled it with overwhelming glory. You saw the compassion of God there through Jesus Christ. After driving out the money changers, he began to minister to those who were brokenhearted, those who were suffering under the weight of sin. He sought to restore them. Those who were downcast and depressed and discouraged, he inspired them with the benefit of the Father's love. Those who did not understand those things that they were reading, he began to explain and to expound, and he brought them healing. He brought them a balm. He truly was the desire of all nations, not just the desire of, quote unquote, the Hebrew nation, but all the nations that were around heard of the Son of God. And they came in even after his passing. Because his fame had spread abroad, they came in seeking. And before his passing, they came seeking from all nations because they were hungering and they were thirsting after righteousness. And God filled that house with his glory. He filled it with his character to be seen. And he said that this is going to be greater than what Solomon ever did. And what God will do also for us will be greater than what has been in our previous experience if we are strong, if we work, if we remember that he is with us and we do not fear. Father in heaven, we thank you for the opportunity again of being able to look in the book of Haggai. We pray, Lord, that you help us to not rely solely upon appearances, because we sometimes do. Look at what has been, what was, and we compare it to the present, and we sometimes hang our head. But when we look at this story, we remember that while we can be mindful of what was in the past, we can still have confidence and hope of what is in the present and what the future holds. And so we ask, Lord, that you would please help us in our individual lives to remember those things, to be strong and to work, to know that you are with us and to not fear. As we remember again in the spiritual warfare, the same elements and the same principles, for indeed you will come, visit with us and give us a greater blessing than we have ever received before. And so I pray that, Lord, you might fulfill your word and your good and perfect work in us. Thank you again for all of your blessings. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for your word. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.